All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a story that's both incredibly complex and frankly just heartbreaking.
It really is a tough
We're
one.
going to be doing a meticulous analysis of the aviation tragedy that involved NASCAR legend Greg Biffle and his family. I want to be really clear from the top. Our mission here is to synthesize the verified facts.
Right.
We're focusing on the investigative process, what we actually know, and trying to separate that from, well, from all the noise and speculation out there.
And that separation is absolutely crucial in a case like this. The reporting we've gathered gives us a clearer picture now, not just of the human cost, the victims, but also a pretty detailed timeline of the flight's final critical minutes.
And the federal investigation, which is massive.
A massive federal response. So we're really looking at two things here: a profound human loss and a very complex aviation puzzle that requires, forensic levels of precision to figure out.
Okay, so let's just dive right in because there's one detail that, for me, just completely shifted the entire narrative. It's the emotional core of this whole thing.
I know exactly what you're talking about. The 4 words.
The 4 words.
Okay, 4 words.
It's this hook that tells you that the people inside that plane, they knew in real time that something was going terribly wrong.
And it's the most definitive warning we have. It came long before air traffic control would have understood the severity, before anyone on the ground knew. The warning came from inside the plane, from Christina Biffle.
Yeah, and not to the tower, not to 9/11.
No, she sent a text message to her mother.
Think about that for a second. In that moment of crisis, that's who you reach out to.
And the message itself was just so simple, so chilling. We're in trouble.
We're in trouble. I just can't get past the economy of that. 4 words, it's not a panic, it's not a long message, it's a statement of fact.
A blunt summary of a situation that was deteriorating by the second, and it was sent just minutes before the crash. It fundamentally changes how we have to think about those final moments.
It really does.
And for investigators, this is a critical piece of evidence. It frames the entire incident. This wasn't a sudden, catastrophic explosion. It wasn't an instantaneous structural failure where no one knew what hit them.
Because there would be no time to send a text?
Exactly. There's no time. This message suggests a crisis that was unfolding. It was happening fast, yes, but there was a window. A window of time where the situation was dire enough for the pilot to be taking emergency action, but there was still enough time for Christina to grab her phone, think, and type.
So that real-time perception of danger from inside the cabin,
Yeah.
it matches what the flight data starts to show us from the outside.
It confirms the urgency. The human feeling of we're in trouble lines up perfectly with the technical reality of the plane's flight path.
And that urgency is, it's just amplified when you understand the context of the flight, why they were even in the air that day.
Yeah, this wasn't some routine business trip. This was supposed to be a celebration.
A big one. The sources all confirmed this was a planned birthday trip. Greg Biffle was about to turn 56 the next week. This was the kickoff to a milestone celebration.
And that detail, a family birthday trip, it just creates this brutal contrast with what happened. A moment that was planned for joy, for family, for making memories.
And instead it ends in this unbelievable tragedy.
It's an exceptionally cruel twist, and it's a human element that, the NTSB actually has a formal process for. We'll get into their family assistance specialists later, but it's a recognition that they aren't just investigating a machine.
And the scale of that loss, unfortunately, was extensive. The updated reports have now confirmed the identities of everyone on board.
Yes, 7 victims in total.
Greg Biffle, his wife Christina, their daughter Emma, and their son Ryder.
And also on board were Dennis Dutton and his son, Jack, and another family associate, Craig Wadsworth.
So you have multiple families, 3 generations, all intertwined. Their lives just gone in an instant.
A whole network of people.
Yeah.
It's staggering.
You're right. In the initial hours after the crash, I remember there was a lot of confusion. The names weren't released for some time, which brings us to a really difficult but important detail about the crash site itself.
The post-crash fire.
Yeah.
And this is critical for understanding why there was that delay and why the initial information was so fragmented. The officials on scene simply couldn't release names right away. The intensity of that fire meant they needed positive forensic confirmation from the medical examiner.
So this isn't just a matter of visual identification.
No, absolutely not. After an impact and a major fire, the process becomes incredibly slow and scientific. You're relying on things like dental records, maybe DNA. It's a painstaking process.
So that explains the initial gaps in reporting. It wasn't confusion, it was caution. It speaks to the sheer violence of the impact and the aftermath.
Precisely. The NTSB and the local coroner, they cannot rush that. You risk causing even more trauma to the families by releasing incorrect information. So that delay, it's a direct reflection of the devastation the first responders found on the ground.
So we have the text message confirming the feeling of urgency inside. Then you have the flight data, which confirms the action that was taken because of that urgency. Let's get into the timeline.
Okay, so this is where the technical analysis really begins. The jet takes off from Statesville Regional Airport. Everything appears normal for the first minute or so, but the flight is still in what's called the initial critical phase.
That's takeoff and initial climb out, right? Statistically, the most dangerous part of any flight.
It is. It's the most demanding. You're operating at high power, you're relatively slow, you have very little altitude to play with. It's where things are most likely to go wrong.
And that's exactly when the red flag appears in the data.
It is. The flight tracking shows the jet doesn't continue on its planned route. It's barely cleared the airport area when it starts a distinct loop back towards the runway it just left.
The turnback.
The turnback. And that is the moment a routine flight becomes a full-blown emergency.
So, from an aviation perspective, help us understand why that maneuver is such a bad sign. I mean, if something's wrong, why not just go back to where you started? It seems intuitive.
It seems intuitive, but it's one of the highest risk maneuvers a pilot can attempt. A plane does not do that, what's often called an impossible turn, unless the situation on board is absolutely dire. So dire that trying to fly further, to climb to a safe altitude or reach another airport is considered the riskier option.
So what are the specific dangers? Why is it so hard?
Well, it's about physics. It's about energy management. When you take off, you're heavy. You're loaded with fuel for the whole trip. You're also flying at a relatively low speed, just above your minimum safe speed, your V2 speed.
Okay.
To turn back, you have to bank the wings. Even a moderate bank significantly increases what's called the load factor on the wings, which in turn increases your stall speed.
So the speed at which the wings stop flying gets higher just as you're trying to make a tight turn at low altitude and low speed?
You're eating into your safety margin with every degree of bank. You're wrestling this heavy, potentially damaged or underpowered aircraft through a tight, low-altitude turn, trying to get lined up with a runway that's now behind you. It is an incredibly difficult thing to do, even in a perfectly functioning airplane.
So the fact that they even attempted it tells you everything.
It tells you the emergency was profound and time-sensitive. The crew made the decision that the safest place in the world was the pavement they had just left, and they needed to get back to it right now.
It's the technical confirmation of we're in trouble.
It's the physical manifestation of it. You can almost imagine the sequence. An alarm goes off in the cockpit, a catastrophic failure is identified. The decision to turn back would have been made in seconds.
And it would have been immediately obvious to everyone on board that this was not normal. The G-forces, the steep bank angle.
Oh, absolutely. The passengers would have known instantly they were in a serious situation. And that's likely when Christina sent the text. It's all part of this one unified moment of crisis.
And we know from the reports that the flight ended during this attempt to get back. They didn't make it.
That's right. The sources describe it as a crash landing near the runway, or that it happened during the attempted landing. The key thing is they were actively trying to complete that emergency procedure. They were trying to fly the plane all the way to the ground.
Which forces that central question for the NTSB.
What went wrong and when? Was the initial failure so bad they simply lost control during the turn? Or did they manage the turn, but something went wrong on the final approach? Or maybe the initial problem, let's say an engine issue, was compounded by the weather, and that's what made the landing impossible.
This is where we have to talk about the environment. Because this didn't happen on a clear, sunny day.
No, it did not. And the environmental factors add a whole other layer of complexity and risk. The meteorological reports from around the time of the crash are very clear.
What do they say?
Heavy drizzle and a low cloud ceiling. And some reports indicate the conditions were actually getting worse right around the time of the incident.
Okay, so for those of us who aren't pilots, what does a low cloud ceiling mean in a practical sense, especially during an emergency like this?
It means you're flying blind for longer. It means you are in what we call instrument meteorological conditions, or IMC. You have no visual reference to the outside world. The pilot has to rely completely on the instruments to know which way is up, what their altitude is, and where the runway is.
Which is standard procedure for instrument-rated pilots, but
It's standard when everything is going right. It is a massive source of stress when you're also dealing with a major system failure, trying to fly a difficult maneuver you haven't practiced since your last simulator check ride. You're hand flying the plane, dealing with an emergency checklist, communicating, and you can't see the runway.
You're just hoping that when you finally break out of the bottom of those clouds, the runway is right there in front of you where it's supposed to be.
Exactly. You might only have a few hundred feet of altitude, a matter of seconds, to visually acquire the runway, align the aircraft, and land. If you're off course, or too high, or too fast when you break out, you have no time to correct.
So the weather didn't necessarily cause the emergency.
But it could have made a successful recovery impossible. It shrinks your margin for error down to virtually zero. It guarantees that the NTSB's meteorology expert is going to be a key player in this investigation. They will be analyzing that weather data minute by minute, second by second.
And then you have the observations from people on the ground, the witness accounts.
Right, and these are important but have to be handled with care. Several witnesses reported seeing the plane and said it looked way too low. One person even said it seemed to be moving slower than normal.
Which suggests, even to a layperson, that something was wrong. The approach was visibly not right.
It was abnormal. Either the plane was struggling to maintain altitude or the pilots were trying to stay under that low cloud ceiling to keep the runway in sight. Either way, it points to a final approach that was unstable.
And the NTSB's job is to take those subjective accounts, the vibes from the ground, and match them up with the hard data.
That's the methodology, exactly.
Yeah.
A witness account is a data point, but it's a human one. It's subject to perception, distance, memory. So what they do is they take the flight data recorder information, if they can get it, which shows the plane's exact altitude, speed, and position, and they overlay it with the witness's location.
And if the data says the plane was 100 feet lower and 40 knots slower than it should have been at that exact spot,
Then the witness testimony becomes powerful, corroborating evidence. It helps paint a much more vivid picture of those final struggling moments.
which brings us squarely to the investigation itself. The scale of the federal response here really tells you how seriously this is being taken.
Oh, this escalated immediately.
Yeah.
This is a full NTSB Go Team investigation. This is their highest level of response. They don't just send a regional investigator. They deploy a whole team of specialists from Washington, D.C. to this site.
And looking at the list of who they sent, it's like reading the blueprint for their entire investigation. It tells you exactly what failure modes they're considering.
It absolutely does. The team they launched included specialists in systems, power plants, recorders, drones, family assistance, operations, air traffic control, and meteorology.
Let's break some of those down. Systems and power plants. What's the difference?
Think of it this way. Power plants is anything that makes the plane go. The engines, the fuel lines, the propellers or turbines. They're looking for things like an uncontained engine failure, bird strike, fuel starvation, anything like that.
And systems.
Systems is everything that makes the plane fly. The airframe itself, the hydraulics that move the control surfaces, the electrical system, the flight controls. They're looking for a structural failure, a problem with the flaps or rudder, an electrical fire, something that compromised the pilot's ability to steer the aircraft.
So the fact they sent top experts in both tells you they're looking equally at a go problem and a fly problem.
Precisely. They're not ruling anything out at this early stage. It could be an engine failure that started it all, or it could be a flight control malfunction.
Then you have the human side of it, operations and air traffic control.
Right. The operations expert looks at the pilot, their training records, their medical history, their experience in the specific type of aircraft. They try to reconstruct the decision-making process in the cockpit. Did they follow the emergency checklists correctly? Was the turn back the right call?
And the ATC expert.
They focus on the communication. They pull all the tapes. Did the pilot declare an emergency? What exactly did they say? The phrasing matters. Mayday versus pan-pan. Were there any clicks on the microphone? Any garbled transmissions that might indicate what was happening? They're rebuilding the communication timeline second by second.
And then the one we all hear about, recorders. The black boxes.
The holy grail of any investigation. The cockpit voice recorder, the CVR, which captures all the sounds in the cockpit, and the flight data recorder, the FDR, which records hundreds of parameters, airspeed, altitude, engine RPM, control inputs, everything.
If they can be recovered.
That's the million-dollar question. These things are built to survive incredible forces, but the post-crash fire is their biggest enemy. Intense, prolonged heat can damage the solid-state memory chips inside, even if the orange box itself looks intact. Finding them is priority number 1. Reading them is priority number 2.
You also mentioned they brought in drone specialists, which sounds very modern.
It's become a standard and incredibly valuable tool. Before they move a single piece of wreckage, the drone team flies a grid pattern over the entire crash site, taking thousands of high-resolution photos.
To create a map.
A highly detailed 3D map of the debris field. The way the wreckage is scattered tells a story. A long, thin debris field might suggest the plane broke up in the air. A compact, deep crater suggests a high-speed, nose-down impact. The location of each piece is crucial evidence, and once you move it, that evidence is gone forever. The drone map preserves the scene.
All of this explains something that often frustrates the public, which is how slow the NTSB process is. This isn't like a TV show where they have the answer in an hour.
No, and the slow pace is a feature, not a bug. It's intentional. The NTSB's mandate is not to assign blame or find fault for legal purposes. Their sole mission is to find the probable cause to prevent future accidents.
And a wrong answer doesn't prevent anything.
A wrong answer can make things worse. So they are methodical. They are painstaking. They will spend a week or more on site, just documenting and collecting. Then the real work begins, taking the wreckage to a hangar and reassembling it piece by piece, like a giant, tragic jigsaw puzzle.
So when we don't hear anything for weeks or months, it's not because they're not working.
It's because they are working. It can take months just to analyze a single engine component or to decode a damaged recorder.
Yeah.
The final report, the definitive one, often takes a year, sometimes even 2 years to publish. They prioritize being correct over being fast.
So in the immediate aftermath, what are their top priorities? What are they trying to lock down in these first few days?
Priority 1 is that timeline. Pinning down the exact second of takeoff, the exact moment the turn began, what the weather was at the precise location at that precise time. Priority 2 is the recorders. Find them, protect them, get them to the lab in D.C. Priority 3 is the perishable evidence on site. The ground scars, the wreckage pattern, witness interviews while memories are fresh. Given the nature of this crash, that quick turn back, you can bet they are focusing heavily on the operations and systems groups to figure out what could force a pilot's hand so dramatically, so soon.
Let's shift a little bit now to the deeper emotional weight of this. The community reaction, especially from the NASCAR world, was just immense.
It was. The statements from NASCAR, from the families, they were just filled with pain. And they made a point to focus on the children, Emma and Ryder. It immediately brings it down to this human level. This isn't just an aviation statistic. These were kids with school days and soccer practice and futures.
And that brings us back to that NTSB specialist we mentioned earlier, the family assistance expert.
Yes. This is a critical role that was created after some very difficult lessons from past accidents. Their job is to be the bridge between the technical investigation and the grieving families. They provide regular, factual updates. They shield the families from speculation and media intrusion. They make sure that the people most affected by the tragedy are treated with dignity and respect.
It's a recognition that behind every piece of twisted metal they analyze, there's a family that's been shattered.
It's a profoundly important and humane part of the modern investigative process.
And Greg Biffle's personal story adds another layer to this. He wasn't just a famous driver. The sources really highlighted his character, his legacy outside of racing.
They did. He was a licensed and skilled helicopter pilot, and he was known for using that skill for good. Most notably, after Hurricane Helen, he reportedly used his own helicopter to fly supplies and aid to people who were stranded.
So he was someone who actively used his abilities, his courage in high-risk environments to help others.
Right. And that image, the helper, the person who runs toward the crisis, it makes his own death in this context feel even more poignant and tragic. The person known for mastering difficult flying situations to save others couldn't save his own family.
It's a painful irony. And then there is the other detail, the one that resurfaced in nearly every report after the crash. A sort of chilling coincidence.
The fact that this wasn't the first aviation incident he'd been in?
Yeah. Greg Biffle had survived a previous plane crash years ago, back in 2011.
He had, and we need to be very clear here. This has zero technical bearing on the cause of this crash. There's no such thing as bad luck that follows a person into different airplanes.
Of course. But the human narrative weight of that fact is... it's undeniable.
It's profound. It immediately makes you ask all these questions. What was it like to be in that cabin, facing another emergency, knowing you'd been through this once before? Did that past experience give him a sense of calm, or did it create more fear? We can never know. But it adds this incredible psychological layer to the story.
It really does. Okay, moving on, let's talk about managing the information flow here. This is for you listening. As this investigation unfolds over the next year or more, There's going to be a lot of noise.
An incredible amount of noise. We have to address the online speculation directly. When there's an information vacuum, which the NTSB's quiet process creates, people will rush to fill it with theories.
And we're already seeing them. Theories about ice on the wings, about a dual engine failure, pilot error.
And right now, today, all of those are just guesses. They are unproven hypotheses. The NTSB is methodically working through every single one of those possibilities and more. They're looking at weather, systems, human factors, everything at once. To latch onto a single theory at this stage is just not a productive way to understand the event.
The most accurate answer, for now, is we don't know.
It's the most difficult answer, but it's the most honest one. Patience is required. The facts will come, but they will come slowly.
So let's circle back one last time to that text message. We're in trouble. It's the emotional anchor of the story, but let's just clarify again what it could mean, technically.
We know it means urgency, but what kind of trouble? It's unlikely to be something minor. You don't attempt to turn back for a flickering light. Given the context, it could imply a major mechanical issue. A fire warning, a loss of hydraulic pressure that makes the controls feel heavy. Maybe even a flight control problem like a runaway trim.
Or it could be environmental.
It could. It could be the moment they entered the clouds and realized the plane wasn't performing well enough to fly on instruments, or they experienced severe icing. The trouble could have been the sudden realization that their situation was becoming unmanageable.
And it is so important that we don't assume what Christina Biffle meant by it. We can't know the full context of what was being said or what alarms were going off in that cockpit.
We can't. To project a specific meaning onto it would be wrong. All we can do is pair the emotional data point, that text, with the physical data point, the turnback. And together, they paint a clear picture of a crew and passengers who knew they were in a desperate race against time.
A race they tragically lost. There was another detail in the source as a final heartbreaking note about Christina's own social media post just before the trip.
Yes, reflecting on life, on freedom, on how short things can be. It's a stark reminder of the everyday normalcy of life, right up until the second that everything changes. One day you're sharing a thought with friends online, and the next, the entire world is reading it through the lens of this immense tragedy.
It underscores why that NTSB Family Assistance Team is so vital. Every data point they're analyzing was a person living a normal life.
Exactly.
Okay, so as we start to wrap up this deep dive, let's just quickly summarize the key verified facts that we have from the source material right now.
Sure. Fact 1. The aircraft performed an immediate high-stress turnback maneuver shortly after taking off from Statesville Regional Airport. Fact 2. There are 7 confirmed victims spanning multiple families and generations.
Fact 3. The weather was a significant complicating factor, with heavy drizzle and a low cloud ceiling at the time of the crash.
And fact 4. A full NTSB GO team is on site conducting an intensive investigation that will look at every possible cause, from mechanical failure to human factors.
And of course, the emotional and factual anchor.
Yeah.
The text message from Christina Biffle, "We're in trouble," confirming that those on board were aware of a developing crisis.
Right. It wasn't an instantaneous out-of-the-blue event. There was a window of awareness.
And that leads us to our final thought for you to consider. The very existence of that text message, combined with the act of the turnback, tells us something about the nature of the emergency.
It does. It confirms there was enough time for human beings to perceive a problem, make a conference decision, and even communicate with the outside world.
So ask yourself this. What does that suggest? Does it point more toward a sudden, catastrophic mechanical failure that still allowed for a few moments of decision-making, like an engine fire warning or a rapid depressurization? Or does it perhaps point more toward a cascading series of events, an initial problem that was manageable, which then became an insurmountable crisis when combined with the difficulty of that turn and the poor weather?
That's the core question. Was it a single sudden failure or a spiral of compounding factors? The answer to that is what the NTSB is working so hard to find. Their final report will hopefully tell us not just what broke on the machine, but how that crisis unfolded in those final, precious seconds.
It's a reminder that in aviation, every moment counts. And understanding the sequence of those final moments is the key to making sure a tragedy like this never happens again. Thank you for joining us for this difficult but necessary deep dive.
Thank you. And we just encourage everyone to follow the NTSB's official channels for factual updates as this investigation continues.